start?
I think so. So this is the first in a series. And Melissa, do you want to kind of start us off?
Sure. So I'm Melissa Berninger. I'm the director of the honors program at University of South Dakota, seeing the Missouri River here behind me. That's not where I am today, unfortunately, but and one of the co-chairs of Partners in the Parks committee, along with Rebecca Maxwell and Christina McIntyre. And so this is the first in a series of what will be Thursdays at 3 Eastern, where we explore different national parks and talk to folks who have led Partners in the Parks trips to national parks, and sometimes to National Park Service staff to find out about, careers in the Park Service. And we hope that it sparks some interest in folks to either participate or perhaps lead a Partners in the Parks project. And for those of you who haven't been with Partners in the Parks before, it's a project, it's a partnership between the National Park Service and National Collegiate Honors Council, and we try to run 5 to 8 trips every summer, where honors faculty will collaborate with National Park Service staff to plan usually week-long sort of wilderness adventures where we learn about the park and land management and conservation and all sorts of other great things. And honor students from around the country can kind of come participate. So today we are talking with Christopher Cernick about Crater Lake. So welcome.
Thanks, everybody. Whenever I'm trying something new with my students, I have a favorite metaphor that I use to frame that experience. And it also serves to show the difference that a word can make. So when you're involved in an experiment, in other words, trying something new like we are today, you can think of yourselves as a lab rat. And then you feel that something is being done to you. But I don't like that because I think that's rather unpleasant. And I want to feel that sense of community that Partners has to do with, honors, Partners in the Parks. And so instead of lab rat, I always encourage my students to think of themselves as lab partners. You see how I did that? Partners in the Parks, lab partners, this great experiment of knowledge. So, bear with me. And I'm hoping this is going to work well. How about just a little bit about Crater Lake National Park and the national park system of the state of Oregon? I'm, as Melissa told you, I'm Christopher Cernick. I'm the director of the honors program at Oregon Tech, which is in the beautiful southern high desert of the state of Oregon. We have, I can tell you, let me give you the rundown of all the national parks in the state of Oregon. There's Crater Lake, and that's it. So there's just the one. We have some national historic landmarks. We have some, we have a few other properties too, I should say. But just the one national park, Crater Lake National Park, was founded on May 22nd, 1902. It will celebrate its 120th anniversary in May of 2022, if I said that in the right order. It's the 5th oldest national park in the system. It's a gem in the system, and it's a park like no other. And I've been to a few others too. How big is it? Crater Lake itself, depending on where you measure it, is just shy of 5 miles across to just about a little over 6 miles across. People have no real comprehension of the volume of the lake itself. You'll see probably a few pictures today of Crater Lake. It's bluer than what the pictures show you, right? It's volume-wise, it's something in the order of close to 5 trillion gallons. So, just embrace that for a second. And if you want, for the sake of a comparison here, I take you to the, can you see that okay? This is published by the National Park Service talking about the world's deepest lakes. Crater Lake, depending on how you stack them, it's the 9th deepest lake in the world. And that figure, from what I'm told, can be monkeyed around with when it comes to average depth. Based on some criteria, it actually gets considered the third deepest lake in the world. Just how deep is that though? Because if you're me and I'm kind of visual, and this is what I love about the National Park Service, they make all these great publications, but if you want to know how deep Crater Lake is, you can you see me scrolling up okay? You could put the Statue of Liberty in Crater Lake, but wait, there's more. You could put that on top of the Washington Monument, which is an obelisk that is 555 feet tall. But wait, there's even more. You could put the Statue of Liberty on top of the Washington Monument, on top of the Eiffel Tower, and you would still have clearance, and that's me on a boat right up there, but you would have that much clearance in the deepest part of the lake. So that should give you, well, let's just take a second and go, that's deep. Okay, let's see. That's deep to the tune of about 1,943 feet deep. It's been researched with submarines and various expeditions. It is really it's an amazing lake. Well, yes, okay, great. Yeah, I love that visual because when you look and you go, wow, that's deep, I guess, but you don't really embrace the depth until someone says, well, you could stack these things and you would still have clearance. Okay, but don't do that. Okay. Well, look, I have a little slideshow about my partner's presentation. And, you know, I want to thank people like Christina McIntyre and Rebecca Maxwell and Kathleen King and everybody else, other people here. And I think that's Joan Digby there, who is the person who's responsible for me being here. Thanks for coming, Joan. I'm assuming it's because you had absolutely nothing better to do.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's a pleasure. And I'm just so happy this is continuing. It's great. Hi to everybody.
Joan probably doesn't remember, but Joan and I met in 2015 in Chicago. And these two, you know, esteemed looking people that were sitting right next to me, we were passing a bottle of wine back and forth to each other. And then this one starts up a conversation with me and says, hey, we've never had a trip to Oregon. And there you go.
I do remember it, actually. I remember it very well.
Oh, well, wonderful. That's great. So thank you for that.
And thank you for doing it. That's even better.
My pleasure. So I always tell people that I think there are two factors that will contribute to the decrease in our human lifespan in this century. And one is bad PowerPoint and the other are surveys. So in the interest of promoting a healthy life, I have a slideshow prepared, a PowerPoint, and I followed what I tell my students is like the 10, 20, 30 paradigm. No more than 10 slides. I don't talk for 20 minutes. I've probably already burst that bubble right now. No more than 30 points. On this conversation too, I want to introduce a special guest that I invited. Dr. Douglas Durr accompanied me for a day on the trip. Dr. Durr is a professor at Portland State University, also in the great state of Oregon. And I'll let, when we get to that point, I would ask Doug, put him on the spot, if he could say a few words about his long standing work with our nation's National Park Service and the, if you wouldn't mind, Doug, saying a few words at that time about your work with the indigenous peoples, because your work is really is a really important and interesting intersection of what we do and what the parks and that land has meant to other people before we did what we've done. So we'll get to, you'll know the slide, Doug. You'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, happy to speak now, then, or any other time, Christopher.
All right. I will get to that point, and it'll be clear. It will be clear. All right. Well, so without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about our National park and the Partners in the Park project that brought this experience to a bunch of students from around the United States. There were roughly 10 of us or so. The rather large looking kid in the center is a faculty member at Oregon Tech. He's Dr. Seth Anthony. He's in the chemistry department. He joined us. He was one of the many wonderful people that joined us on that first day. If you go to Crater Lake National Park, it's fairly, everybody can see this. I'm assuming it's okay. Can you, yes, you can see everything? Okay. Let's see here. Any trip to Crater Lake National Park, I think, starts with a photograph at the boundary sign. This is at the west exit or the west entrance to the park. And you will notice how bright and cheery their smiles are. I want to say something like, in the materials that I provided these students before they came, I warned them about things like altitude and how altitude will affect the likelihood or the increased likelihood of you being sunburned or sick. Because I live in Klamath Falls, Oregon. I live a little bit above 4,000 feet. And so when I'm out exercising and running and so on, you know, it took me a while to get used to it. And these kids come from Kentucky and Florida, Wisconsin, and they are sea level kids. And so when you see what I did to them on that first day, you know, I hope you'll be merciful in your opinion of me. But it's a great way to, I mean, it's always like a picture postcard photograph whenever you take one. They were a great group. And like I said, they represented universities and colleges all over the United States, public and private. On day one, and just a little bit about how I envisioned this trip, I wanted to start very high in the park on one of the peaks, and then spend some time on the level of the rim road, right, which goes around the caldera. Fun fact, Crater Lake is not formed by a crater, so it is not an impact crater at all. It is truly a collapsed remnants of a volcano. It's part of the Pacific Rim, like the Cascade Range of volcanoes, I should say. And what you see is a lake formed in a caldera. But for whatever reason, the name Crater Lake stuck. That is our name for it. But I wanted to start high and then come down to the rim road. And then on the third day, get down to the level of the lake itself. And so you'll see that reflected in what we did during our trip. That is Crater Lake. I used no filter to take that shot. It's that blue because, as you know, other colors of the spectrum are absorbed by blue. And when you have roughly 5 trillion gallons of blue, and it's some of the cleanest water in the world, there's no, that they know of, there are no inlets, no subterranean river sources feeding it. It is primarily snow and rain fed. It is one of the mysteries. So it's, you know, you're welcome to research that. But on day one, I said, well, you know, and they knew because they had an itinerary. We hiked Garfield Peak. We had a great education coordinator, Ranger John Dewey, love the name. It was perhaps a mistake to hike that peak on the first day. It is roughly 8,000 feet above sea level. There was some altitude adjustment, which is a polite way of saying people got a little sick and nauseous from being 8,000 feet up. But we had a great lunch on top. The ranger was just top notch. He was a wonderful person, and he really was a thoughtful guide. So, you know, that's one of the highest peaks. If that's, I think that is the highest peak on the rim. It is not the highest peak in the park. You can see, I don't know, can you, I wonder if I don't know if I want to zoom that, if it's going to help. Mm-hmm. Can you see this little rock sticking up out of the lake? That's known as the Phantom Ship. I don't technically think that is a cone. There are approximately 20 volcanic cones in the park, including the well-known one, which is Wizard Island, which you see in every other photo of Crater Lake. And then there's another cone underneath the water surface called Merriam Cone. And Doug, if you know, you're welcome to chime in. I don't think the Phantom Ship is a cone. I think that it's just part of like some type of caldera remnant rock structure. But it is roughly, I mean, you can't tell, but that is 16 stories high, that rock above the surface. So, all right. Day 2. So, just humor me for like my Zoom knowledge. Can you guys see the text in the picture just fine? Okay. All right. On day 2, we were treated to a rare experience. The National Park Service employs historians who are, I think, in many ways, the unsung heroes of our national park system and the preservation of its history and memory. We have a great park historian in Steve Mark at Crater Lake. He gave us a talk. He took us on a particular tour of the national park. There's a tour called the Lady of the Woods Loop. You can see real park architecture. I'll show you a piece of that later. But the real treat for me, and this picture takes you there, is that there was an original park road. And I think quite a few people, I would dare say most, don't really know that. The Rim Road that most people are familiar with, the modern day Rim Road itself, is about 33 miles. It's a great, we did that as kind of a victory lap on the last day, and I told them we can stop wherever you want. But Steve, the historian, who was in way better shape than any one of us. Oh my God, please slow down, Steve. Steve, the students are dying, it was like that. He took us on a rare tour of the original park road, which just really kind of made the whole trip for me. It was amazing. He was a thoughtful guide, if not a very, very quick guide, and full of information about how it was originally plotted out, how it was developed, why it was abandoned. And just as a note, there was still some altitude adjustment to make on day 2. Happy to keep moseying. Yeah, and the trees are great too, if you love trees, and I do. Okay, this is a very representative example of national park architecture. You can notice the stones and how this is not a stone facade kind of building. The roof, the shingles, the colors. If you've ever seen, the kind of through tenons on this fascia, it's a wonderful piece of architecture, and there are quite a few examples. If I'm correct and I'm kind of blanking, this might be is this the superintendent's original dwelling, if that's correct? Doug, do you know if that's right?
I believe you're right. I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure that's an old superintendent's house.
Yeah, it's, can you guys see my cursor? I don't know if you have this level of seeing on Zoom. Do you see the cursor or not? Oh, well,
No.
These Yahoos to the far right of the picture, the Yahoo in the hat is me, and the Yahoo one over is Steve, the historian. The rest are students, and I think there might be another faculty member lodged in there, or he's taking a picture. But seeing so a Partners project involves a variety of educational opportunities, and one that I was really glad that we could take advantage of, especially because Crater Lake has such fine examples of it, was talking about the park architecture. And our historian was just a fantastic guide through that aspect of what it meant to have a national park, and what was responsible for the development and the continuation and the existence of these national parks. And primarily, I mean, the people who lived there, lived on site, and conducted work and research there now. So day 2, still day 2. Oh, day 3, you guys. Oh boy. Okay. So I told you that we took the hike up Garfield Peak on day 1. That's rated as a strenuous hike. And, I think the students would agree. There's only one public access trail down to the lake itself. And this is, it's known as the Cleetwood Cove Trail. I think the Cleetwood was an original research vessel, if I remember correctly, and that, explored Crater Lake. But the hike down to Crater Lake is easy. The hike back up from Cleetwood Cove is, as the map, your Black Border National Park Service map will tell you, strenuous. It's all gain. Hardly any distance, but all gain. Any highlight to Crater Lake National Park has got to be one of the guided boat tours. They are guided by National Park Service rangers. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of the wonderful person on my boat, but he was tops. He was just amazing. There are many features that get pointed out, geologic and otherwise, on a boat trip. And we had 2 boats. We got our tickets at the very last minute. I won't tell you how that happened or why that happened. No crime was involved, I can say that. But one of the great features of Crater Lake National Park, besides Wizard Island, which you can see in every other picture, besides the Phantom Ship, is what is known as the Old Man of the Lake. Biologists, people from the park believe it's a hemlock. And you know the old saying about hemlocks, when you're looking at trees in an Oregon forest, if it flops on top, it's a mountain hemlock. They don't have, really erect tops. They kind of flop over. It's an endearing feature of a hemlock. The Old Man of the Lake bobs around. It floats vertically, which is kind of one of its endearing oddity features. It's noted to have, it's a kind of a contained little ecosystem. It's about 30 feet tall. They believe it's something like 130 feet or 130 years old. And as I was telling some people before we started our time today, way back in the day, and that's how kids refer to historic time, way back in the day, you could, on one of these boat trips, locate the Old Man of the Lake, and they would allow you to hop up on top of the old man and snap a photograph. And if I would have done my duty, I could have found one of those, but right. When you're on a boat trip, they will, fill up a water bottle or 2. As I noted, it is some of the cleanest water, and it is also because there's no sediment, right? Because there's no inflowing rivers, rivulets, etc., sources. It is so clear, you guys. When you look down into it, it is just remarkably clear, and you can't, your brain has a really difficult time processing just how much or how far you are seeing down into it. The water is, it's amazing. I said, yes, please, may I have a water bottle full of Crater Lake water? And because they get, Doug, don't they get something like 43 feet of snow annually a year, making it one of the snowiest, if not the snowiest, consistently inhabited place on the planet? It's remarkable. And if you don't know what that looks like, imagine trees that look like they're this tall, and that's the top of the tree that you're staring up at in the summer. You're kind of face to face with in the winter. Let's see, what did I say? Just ask me how deep the lake is. I think we covered that.
Christopher, there's a
Yeah.
question from Izzy.
Please.
Izzy, if you'd like to ask that question, feel free,
Yeah.
or it's in the chat. So her question is the hemlock still alive and does it have leaves?
That's a great question. The answer, of course, is yes and no. No leaves on the tree, but there are mosses and other types of, biological life living on the log under the surface. And so as as an ecosystem unto itself, yeah, there is life on it, I guess I would say, but no, the tree is not alive. Is that, let me just think,
Great.
does that, I think that hits that question.
Yep. Izzy says, that's incredible.
You got it. Let's see, share screen. Yeah, it's, you don't always get to see it either. So I felt really lucky that at least, because we had 2 boats that day, we had to break our group up and my boat got to see it. The other boat said they didn't. And so, of course, I'm the luckiest guy. It was fun. Yeah. And it was a beautiful experience.
To underscore how much snow they receive at Crater Lake, it's important to know that even these buildings you see the pictures of in these prior slides, during the wintertime, they have to install cavernous tubes that lead to the doors because the entire lower levels of the structures get buried in snow, and often they get buried up over the 2nd story as well. This has a lot of interesting implications for for the flora and fauna, and also the people who are living there. It gets pretty strange there in the winter when people are living a subterranean existence, burrowing through the snow most of the winter. But also these trees that you see, we have many, many kinds of trees in Oregon, as you might assume, but so many of the trees here are just so well suited for this kind of snowpack. And so we get, instead of the hemlocks that we have, for example, at lower elevations, here we have mountain hemlocks that can sustain just heavy, heavy snowpack for long periods of time over the top of them. And you see this, while you may not recognize some of these trees in the background instantly, I can just assure you that all of these are trees that have unique capacity to deal with that level of being buried in snowpack for months out of the year. And so that mountain hemlock there floating in the water, the tree itself has died, but they are amazingly resilient trees, able to survive in just the harshest conditions along those lines. So just thought I'd add that.
Thanks, Doug. That's true. I mean, and you'll see places where they have, like I worked in Denali National Park for a couple summers myself, and you'll see the kind of tipsy looking trees over there in Denali, but you'll also notice, and then correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, part of those adaptive features are, the shorter branches, right? Because especially at the places where the snow is so dense, they can't sustain the big Christmassy boughs that you would see on something like a Fraser fir at a lower elevation or something of that nature. Yep. Oh, you guys, the lake. You can swim in it too. Just a couple other thoughts. You can swim in it. It is very cold. And I believe this is the only place anywhere where you will find the little indigenous species known as the Mazama newt. So thank you, Crater Lake, for that. Oh, here it is. Look at, there you go, Doug. Okay, you guys. So let me say something nice about this guy for a minute. I had a few different faculty and several different Park Service rangers and employees working on this project. I could not have done it without them. I learned something every day. It was just amazing. So I'm going to embarrass Doug for a moment, and then I'll let him speak. When we hiked on the 4th day, we hiked up Mount Scott. It's a special place, and it's tall, so it's almost 9,000 feet. It was very warm. See, what did I say about Dr. Doug Durr, our visiting professor for the day, gave a great talk up and down the mountain. He joined us for dinner in the lodge. And this is what the student said. The student said that he was like a cross between Bob Ross and Grizzly Adams with a PhD. So they had nothing but wonderful things to say about this guy. Now I'm gonna totally hype him up for you. Yeah, there was altitude adjustment. That's by now you figured out that's my running gag. But it was such a great day to spend it with Doug and to hear what he had to say. I appreciated that he was able to participate in the manner that he was. And, you know, like I've known Doug since we were both undergraduates. So, you know, when your life can come together in such a beautiful moment like this, education, sharing, outdoors, students, everything, it's just something that I am truly thankful for. Doug, do you care to say a few words now?
Sure. Yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you all. As Christopher says, I had the interesting experience of being friends with Christopher when we were both very, very young. I think we even knew each other kind of in passing in high school, which is interesting. And then we lost track of each other for, I don't know, 20 years. And in the meantime, Christopher became an instructor at OIT and very involved with, of course, the Honors College and building these relationships with national parks and educational opportunities within national parks. In that intervening 20 years, I had become the primary person who provides ethnographic research support as an intermediary and researcher between tribes and national parks all over the American West. And somehow we didn't realize that one another were up to these things until suddenly Christopher is contacting me and saying, would you be willing to participate in this effort at Crater Lake? And so I do work, as I say, I have projects currently that I manage all the way from north of the Arctic Circle to the Mexican border. And I even have a project back at Acadia on the East Coast. But I'm from Oregon and in fact have very strong ties to not only Crater Lake, but also work with the Klamath tribes, the tribe that lives at the base of the mountain that has continued to be attached to this place since the eruption occurred. And in fact, I'm standing up the cultural director of the Klamath tribes today as I speak to you. So ironically, I decided to do this and put off a call with him. Hopefully he'll forgive me. But the truth is, of course, across the United States, most of these national parks have been created in lands that Native people have lived on for countless generations. And very often the parks were created with the assumption that they were wild spaces that had really no meaningful human presence back a century or so ago. And of course, as time moves on, we run up against the realities that that's not the case, that these places actually have very rich Native heritage. And so at Crater Lake, that heritage is profound. The eruption appears to have occurred about 7,700 years ago. It created this caldera. And yet we have a rich tribal oral tradition of those events, those eruptions, and even extensive archaeological sites buried under the ash created by the eruption, with famously, for example, a pair of sandals found woven out of various grasses and bark that were that have a weave in them that's the same as the tribes have used until the recent past. And so that heritage runs quite deep, and Crater Lake has been a place that people go to for spiritual purposes, for prayer, vision quests all around the caldera rim. And the sides of the mountain are hugely important in terms of traditional berry picking. There are berry patches that families return to year after year and have camps at that they return to. They're inherited down their mother's line, and hunting sites and other things around the perimeter of Crater Lake. So it was a pleasure to be able to go out with Christopher and this team of very motivated students, huffing and puffing up the side of this mountain, actually to the very highest point in the park, to look down on the landscape and to be able to talk about this deeper heritage in a way that seemed to really resonate with them. So anyway, great opportunity. It was a pleasure to be part of it.
Doug, you made a comment there that through their mother's line. So I'm assuming the tribe was more matriarchal than patriarchal, or?
When it came to plant production and plant properties, yes. Hunting territories are inherited down the male line.
Okay.
So they actually, it is fairly complex and nuanced depending on the task and resource involved.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doug. I'm trying to keep a cat from bombing my session here. Doug also wrote a great article about what he was just talking about. Doug, what was the title? I always refer to it as a sacred place, but what's the full title of the article? Yeah,
it's an article that I published quite a long time ago called The Most Sacred Place. And it's published in the Oregon Historical Quarterly. It was something I wrote kind of as a quick overview at the time of the centennial of the park's creation. I wrote that for a special issue of the Oregon Historical Quarterly, the one historical journal of the state, to commemorate the centennial of the park. And wrote that with the real active involvement of the Klamath Tribe's cultural staff and committees who actually reviewed and kind of gave guidance on what they felt was appropriate for public disclosure. Because so much of what the tribes have to say is sensitive in a way. There are things that they want the world to know, like this place is profoundly important to them and they want it protected and cared for and respected by everyone. On the other hand, there are details, nuances, spiritual practice, locations of burials. Obviously, they don't want that out to the world, or the fact that you might find an artifact there. They don't want that going out to the wider world. So I work very closely with the tribes to try to help find the right voice and the right message to go out to the wider world about why these places matter. And so that was an opportunity to kind of summarize that for the world. And so I've been glad to hear, I guess Christopher has been able to use that for as part of the readings for this group, which was good.
Yeah, they read, thank you, Doug. The students were sent a packet of pre-reading materials. Some of it was about hydrology. Some of it was, about the indigenous significance to the place. This was Doug's article. And there were several others about, white bark pine, the problems with a particularly resilient tree that grows in its own zone, like the white bark pine zone, the Clark's nutcracker, which is a great bird. So, part of the partners' experience was, making sure that they did their homework before they came and we talked about these matters in great depth. At the end of day 4, I had to twist his arm, but Doug agreed to have a nice meal with us in the rebuilt historic lodge. And this is what a group of happy students look like who were treated to a very decent meal in the National Park Lodge. And then so, I'm going to publicly try to get Doug to agree that he has to make room in his 2022 calendar. 2022 is my university's 75th anniversary. It's going to be the 10th anniversary of our honors program here. And you have an invitation, Doug, to be a part of it when we do it in a couple summers. So,
thank you. I look forward to it.
Yeah. There were no altitude issues by this time at dinner, you guys, so we were doing pretty well. Let's see here. Day 5, this was our last day in the park. We did kind of what I would call a park road victory lap. I talked to you about the road that runs along the caldera. It's roughly, I think it's like 33 miles. It's something like 30 or 33 miles. I told them we could stop wherever they want. This is V-Day Falls. We stopped at Plikney Falls. We stopped at some pumice features. There was a lot of car sickness that day because the road, it's high altitude and it's really like cut back, switch back. But we had a great day. Every Partners in the Parks project culminates in a student project. And that student project, well, let me put it to you this way. They can be various and many. I'm trying to be vague because you need to discover it for yourself. But I will tell you that, and this is my backyard in Klamath Falls, a student did a a yoga session inspired by her impressions and experience of Crater Lake. And this was a student from Wisconsin. I remember her very well. She was very thoughtful. And you can see this is the view from my backyard looking out into the I think south and west. We had a variety of projects that the students did at the very end, poetry, you name it. Yeah, it was really wonderful. I can't remember if this is my last slide. Oh no, I do have one more. So, here's the lake again, one last time. I would like to offer another Partners in the Park project in 2022, like I noted, to celebrate our 10th anniversary of our honors program, Oregon Tech's 75th. And then, like I noted, it's also, I could have put this up there too, but it will be the 120th anniversary of the founding of Crater Lake National Park. So, I've probably violated most of my rules about how to do a good PowerPoint. I yammered a lot, but I wanted to thank you for listening. In the time remaining, Melissa, if people wanted to ask questions or if they wanted to engage in some other way, I'd be happy to share. Oh, am I? Yeah, that's very kind of you, Rebecca.
Christopher, just a question. A lot of national parks like Zion and others have experienced kind of overuse to the point of shuttling or just problems and impacting the experience individually. What is Crater Lake's situation?
Doug might want to say something, but from my perspective, right, it just to reiterate the whole snow fact, snow, it is buried in snow right now. And the snow season can run from, October, November to May, June. It is not unusual. When I did a bunch of reconnaissance hikes before I put this trip on, because I wanted to note, how long did it take a 50-plus-year-old man to hike his tail up Mount Scott, or where are good views, or when would be a good time to talk about this? So I think part of a thoughtful project is to kind of go through it yourself and to figure out where you're going to go and what you're going to ask people to do and what's it really going to take. So I was there every single day, everyone, and I dragged my kids and I said, let's go do this. But because of the snow, right, I think that decreases the overall human impact that could otherwise be meted out on the park. Because when you think about how long and for, how inaccessible it is for many people, I want to say that is in some ways one of Crater Lake's saving graces.
But when it is accessible, because there's a real season,
right? Do
people kind of flock to it?
Yeah, it's so like, yes.
I see Doug kind of chomping at this bit too.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say that, like I said, I worked in Denali National Park for 2 summers, right? And that's an international draw. So people from Scandinavia, Europe, Japan, etc. It was common to have them bust in all the time. They don't have that kind of, it's not my experience with Crater Lake that they have that extensive, ton of people all the time, feeling that I've had at Yosemite when I've been there, or Denali, etc. Doug?
Yeah, I would say that there are challenges. We do get, because the tourist traffic is all very condensed at certain times of the year. It's very compressed. The snow mercifully covers everything. And this is true in many Western national parks. It gives you a reprieve, but it also, even when people are there, the ground disturbance is minimal. So it doesn't leave the social trails and the damage and all that you see. But one of the problems we face at Crater Lake and many other parks in our area is just that when the park was first conceptualized, there wasn't a population even vaguely resembling what we have today. I mean, we see demographic change in many parts of the country, but we've gone from having, less than 1 million people in the greater region to having 5 or 6 million people within plausible sort of 3-day traveling range of the place. So, and unfortunately, I can't turn my ringer off here on my phone, so I apologize for that. But so the reality is that the infrastructure just doesn't exist to accommodate the level of traffic we now see.
Mhm.
And that's been a kind of an ongoing problem in Crater Lake.
Yeah, thanks.
Can I just say something? It's Joan here. You guys there?
Yep.
Yes.
Please.
First of all, I really am glad I talked Chris into doing this trip because it was magnificent. And that's the way all of them start, with a suggestion. Why not do a park near your institution? And that's really how this program has grown so dramatically over the last, I don't know, we started in 2007. So the growth of it is really remarkable. I have a few former students who went on every trip I would let them attend. And one of them, who is now a patent attorney in Minneapolis, photographed the Hawaii trip. And then what was the other one? Sequoia.
Oh,
And last week, she simply left her office for a week and headed off to Bryce and then videotaped it. Because now, I don't know, 8 years later, her experiences in doing this kind of hiking and camping and living out and so on and so forth have just totally informed her character. And I think Chris will probably be in touch with several of the students who were on that trip and discover the same thing, which is that taste for the genuine, the desire to know about indigenous peoples and about, old roadways that are not current, really is extremely important. In Acadia, for example, we repaired the old carriage road. That was the service project we did there. And as we were doing it, a man came along and said, "Do you mind if I take a shovel and help?" And we said, "Sure. And what makes you want to do that?" He said, "I come up here every year and I feel that I must give back. So I want to join you and help in this project." So the interactions with other people in the park, with the rangers, with the historic people, absolutely changes a person's perspective. And Chris's talk made that very apparently clear. And thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Joan. I could do a whole other hour on Crater Lake in the winter because we have a standing field trip that we do. We have the acronym for our field trip series is the Helios field trips, the honors, experiential learning and inquiry and outdoor settings field trips. We have a set of them that we do every first year, one per term with our entering first year cohorts. And in the winter, we always go to Crater Lake and we go snowshoeing. And we go, this is only the second time that we've not been able to go for obvious, pandemic inspired reasons. But I've been when we've been snowshoeing when it's been literally sideways, intense, wet, blowing snow. To, like every time we would stop, the sun would shine down upon us in a clearing of trees and like a bird would fly by that we wanted to talk about. And an animal would pop up and go, "Hello, thank you for coming." It's been like that, So I've seen Crater Lake. I've seen it threatened by fire on the most amazing summer days and on some of the roughest winter trips that you could imagine. But I've never had a student die, which is always a plus. The university appreciates that. They've all made it, no limbs or digits lost. It's, but yeah, so, I could talk about, this is like my summer Crater Lake. You should see my winter Crater Lake. It's a whole different world.
It is something you can think about. They do a winter program at Cedar Breaks in Utah. It's not impossible to do that.
I'm game, but you know, I don't know about these students these days. I mean, I'm pretty hardy. I'm a hardy old timer. Maybe they would do it.
Christopher, there was a question in the chat about where did the group camp or sleep?
You know, that was a point of, yeah, okay. So this takes a few seconds to answer. The quick answer is that summer we didn't, but in a future iteration, I would hope to. And there's the why. Every state in this great United States has its different kind of natural disasters that threaten it, tornadoes, flooding, etc. In Oregon, we have a season or part of the year that is known as fire season. And the summer before we went was one of the worst on record. Places that I take our honors program students regularly were burned. There's a state park near us where we would go. And parts of Crater Lake were severely threatened, and one of the campgrounds were closed. And so at the very last minute, and that summer, because of previous fire, one of the main campgrounds was shut down for like renovation or restoration, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made this kind of last minute decision out of, fear and concern, because you could try camping, but if there were a fire, you'd have to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to my university, and at the last minute, they agreed to let I had to pay for it. They let the students camp in the dorms.
Oh, okay.
In the residence hall. So I can promise you that we spent full long days in the park. I regretted that we couldn't take advantage of one of the park's most beautiful features, which was its night sky. If you don't know, the National Park Service has an entire night sky division.
Yes.
And Crater Lake is just phenomenal at night. So, that's one of my regrets, but I did it out of an abundance of caution and safety, because when it's bad fire season, and I'm sure Doug will attest to this, it looks like the apocalypse outside. It's like orange and green, and I'm not, like at all points of the day. So that was my, kind of executive decision. The students, they would have preferred, and I understand, but I just had too many concerns.
Sounds like you made the right call, and it's not the first Partners project that ran out of a university dorm.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky that we didn't have what volcanoes had, because the Cascade Range, I mean, everybody sees these really pretty postcards of these mountains up and down the West Coast, and they look really pretty because they are, and they're some of the best. But they're part of an active volcano range. Now, Mount Mazama, which is where Crater Lake comes from, the caldera just collapsed on itself. That's how it was formed. It's still an active volcano too, so, I'm hoping I'm never going to see that. I've already seen one volcano blow in my lifetime, which is Mount St. Helens in 1977, I think it was, the same year the Voyagers were sent out. But so sorry, that was kind of a long, but you could tell I was trying to excuse and, provide a rationale.
As Bill Atwill would say, the adventure begins when the plans go awry.
Yeah. So, it's how it worked. It was how it worked.
Yeah.
Somebody asked how cold it is. The temperature can be anywhere from 32 on up, but in the summer, on the average, it's like 50 to 60 degrees. So you can go swimming in it. My students did. We had a really hot day. They enjoyed it. I have great pictures of them, floating and swimming, and so. Other questions or other Crater Lakeness? I mean, I know we're at 1 o'clock now.
Yeah, we're getting to the top of the hour. So out of respect for everybody's time, and we have been recording this. We'll probably just kind of edit down some of the rougher spots to make it accessible.
Oh, great.
So So thank you, Christopher and Doug, and thank you everyone for coming. It's great to see you, Joan.
Thanks, Joan. Thanks, Doug.
And we have next week's third Thursday, we will be visiting the Everglades. So I hope that you all join us again in a month to hear about that project.
With Kathleen King from Hillsborough
Hillsborough Community
County
College
Community College. Yes.
in Florida and Tampa.
Great.
If anybody wants to know, you're welcome to email me. I have an easy name to find at my university because there are no vowels in it. So just, remember no vowels and you will find my name.
Isn't there a debate about the Y being a vowel in some?
It is the sometimes why. Yeah, it is the sometimes why, That's always been my defense. But yeah, I welcome any emails and thanks for this opportunity too. Thanks. Thanks. Are you still here? Thanks, Rebecca. Is she still here?
Yeah,
Oh, there you
Rebecca's
are.
here.
There. Okay. Yep.
There is you.
Yep. And thanks, Melissa, too. Thanks, Christina, Rob. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for coming, too.
Thanks
Bye.
for
Thank
hosting
you.
this, Christopher.
Yeah, thank you.
Did what I could.
Okay.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.
You too. Bye.
Bye.